Public input. 1, 2 15-minute public input sessions will be allowed during each council meeting. Time will be divided equally among those wishing to speak. However, no person will be allowed to speak for more than 5 minutes. Does not say what you can or cannot talk about. Number 2, no person may address the council more than twice in any meeting. Again, it does not limit what you can say. Number 3, issues raised during public input will be noted by the town administrator, who will be responsible for responding to comment directly during normal working hours. Or, if that is not the appropriate thing, or bringing to the council for discussion at a subsequent meeting. That tells me that issues brought up in public input should be handled by our town administrator, and if he feels they need to come in front of the council, he should bring them to us. And then number 4 very clearly states that council members may request that a comment be added to new business at a subsequent meeting, meaning that if any of us, after hearing the comment, wants to have further discussion on that, we can bring that up and ask that to be put on a subsequent meeting. Above and beyond that, I don't see where we're limiting what can be said. I don't see above and beyond the personalities, which would be just impolite and not how you conduct yourself at a public meeting, that we limit what the public can say to the town council any more than to say you cannot do it more than 10 minutes in one meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Levesque.
After attending a couple of Mr. Attorney Buckley's meetings, seminars and stuff, they asked who wanted to have public input, counted the number of people, divided by the 5 minutes, and everybody was allotted that amount of time on the timer. I think we need to buy a timer, and I think we need to abide by what the rules say. We're going to have them in here, that's what we're going to do. That's the way to go. And they say to everybody, they end up with 2 minutes apiece or 15 minutes, 15 seconds apiece, that's what they get to do.
Mr. Levesque.
Thank you.
In regard to public input, though, one of the things I just want to address is this whole concept of broad brushing the term personal attacks, engaging in personalities, and stuff, because it's applied way too broad. If someone comes up and is criticizing any action that we take, that's not a personal attack or or engaging in personalities. If someone comes up here and says, Mr. Lizotte, I disapprove the way you handled the argument you presented. I think that you were intellectually dishonest. I personally don't think, I would not engage them. I'd just say, okay, that's their opinion. And at a later date, if there was an opportunity in which to speak to it, then I would speak to it. Or I could write an editorial about it to say the reasoning behind it. I've said this in the past because I believe in other forums around town, the fact is people, I think, throw that out there in order to suppress. And my feeling is you really need to understand it. Legal terms ad hominem. If they come up here and basically say, you know, we were talking about what we were going to serve at a meeting or a function or something, and I said, I'd like to have hamburgers, and someone came up here and said, well, you know, Mr. Lizotte, you're a little overweight, and the fact that you want to have hamburgers is not the way I think you should be. That would be a personal attack. He's saying, look at me, my characteristics, and saying, and that is that type of an attack. I think if people come forward here, and even though we don't like it, if they say they got information and there's conflicts, or something in there that is conflicting, and they come up here and say there's some level of dishonesty, I think we just address it. We all know that a lot of things that we're doing here, we're moving quick, and sometimes we can get ahead of ourselves. That happens. But the fact of the matter is we can't suppress it. We can't not want to hear it. We really just need to listen to it, come back. We always have opportunities to discuss it amongst ourselves in public. But I really think it needs to be brought forward. We shouldn't be afraid of criticism.
As chairman, I agree. And obviously, I've been accused of doing some things inappropriately. But yet, at the same time, I think it's totally inappropriate for myself or anybody else to restrict that kind of public input. If someone has an issue with us, they certainly should be given the time to do that. In terms of 5 minutes, yes, we'd like to limit it to 5 minutes, primarily to give everybody an opportunity to speak without dragging these meetings on until 10:30 at night. And I think the chair can determine without a timer that they've exceeded the 5 minutes or whatever. I'd rather err on the side of allowing people to speak. I may disagree with Mr. Pearl in his comments this morning or this a few minutes ago, hours ago, whatever. But yet he has a right to come here and make those statements, and we can respond accordingly, as Mr. Lazat said. So again, I think my only concern as a chair, and this is where being a chair is very, very difficult, is maintaining that balance. I think unfortunately sometimes our meetings can get contentious, and my biggest concern about that is not dealing with a contentious situation or a critical situation. My biggest concern is it's a deterrent for others accepting positions in committees and the town council. That's my biggest concern. This is where it works against us, and hence that's why we had the Best Boards Wins sessions. We want to continue to do that, and it's all about communications. John Graybill talked about thanking all of us for coming to his joint meeting with the zoning board and the conservation and the planning board. That was, in fact, one of the best meetings that I've attended. And it was a good, positive meeting because staff and the chairpersons and key committee members of all 3 or 4 committees were there talking to each other. And if we can just learn to talk to each other, that's going to be huge, and we can dispel some of the criticism that we hear about Hooksett. Hooksett continues to be a rising star, as stated by town planners from other communities. We have all of these positive things going. We can have all of the rules and procedures and bylaws and town charters. But it comes down to we need to treat each other with respect and trust. And if we do that, we'll do just fine. So I think we talked about public input.
I'd like
Yes.
to make a motion.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that a copy of the Town of Hooksett Town Council Rules and Procedure be printed and left out for the public to pick up along with agenda and other items at each council meeting, so it can be referenced by those who need to as they come in.
Second that.
Do you have a second? Second. Any discussion? I think it's a great idea.
All right, I had one quick question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you're gonna get mad, but, so, if someone says something, says I eat too many burgers, I can't respond until 2 weeks later?
No,
Or can I respond right then and there?
no.
You cannot respond, in my understanding, you cannot respond at the time.
All right.
And it's up to if the chair feels it's derogatory and it's inappropriate, it's going to be unfortunate, it's going to be up to the chair to
Okay.
control that situation.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
I tend to feel that it becomes dangerous if we limit what we think people should say. And it's up to us as the council to have some self-control and not respond. And I'm not accusing anyone, I'm just saying that people can come up, speak their piece, this is their opportunity to do that, they're allowed to send us emails, they can contact us any way they choose. And I think that we just have to sit, listen. If we want to respond, we have other forms under which to do that. But I really am concerned that we don't limit the citizens' right to speak.
Thank you, I agree. That's why they pay us the big bucks, right? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of having the Town of Hooksett Town Council Rules and Procedures available at that desk for every meeting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same side. Motion passes. Let's see, complaint, why don't we go right to complaint procedure? That seems to be complementary to this. Dr. Schenkel, you have a... Oh, I'm sorry, we're still there. Town boards committee meetings, I can't recall what that was about.
Well, we were talking about, well, you had wanted to put together a meeting regarding the budget.
Oh, yes, yes, yes,
Town
yes,
boards
yes.
and committees,
Okay.
and we were looking for an appropriate date. If we want to do it on a Saturday, which,
This was to get everybody up to speed here, especially for the people out there. We had talked about having a kind of an annual meeting where we'd be talking about the budget and setting priorities with the idea that all of the committee chairs and committee members would be invited, along with the budget committee, and obviously department heads. And it would be kind of like an annual meeting where department heads and Dr. Schenkel would present the budget, talk about some of their priorities, and people, again, in the spirit of communications, have input into that. And so we're talking about a date, possibly doing that in November, I think we talked about, right?
Well, actually, Christina and I, the finance director and I spoke about it, and I need to get my budget to you folks by the end of November, and I think December 2nd, actually. And so if we're looking for a Saturday, we're looking at December 3rd, because then we'll have it.
Sorry, I can't support it.
So,
All right.
I have a
comments?
question. I guess I'm still not completely clear, so this is like pre-budget talking about stuff we're gonna talk about in January or through the month, because everybody comes in throughout the month of December and the Saturday meeting in January. So how does this meeting differ from those other meetings when the departments present their budgets?
Yeah, I was under the impression that we were talking about more of like a year-end state of the town kind of thing. The idea being that we went through a budget cycle. We're going, of course, we're always going through the midst of a budget cycle in mid-year here. But the idea was not to talk about that budget, but to understand how we did in the previous year and maybe think about stuff going forward. The concern I have about inviting the budget committee, as being a budget committee member and now being the representative to it, is that they have a very specific charge, which is to be an independent body that basically check and balance. I would hate to have a situation come about where we all got together and there was some people from the budget committee, and the idea there was that any thoughts or something that came up that they left there thinking that they have to act, and if they don't act the way that, maybe the things that were discussed in that meeting, that they're going to be scrutinized for that. They're supposed to be independent, like I said, check and balance. So that's the only concern I have.
I truly believe that we have hired a very competent town administrator to work with his department heads to bring to the town council a budget that is palatable and closely perfect, so that the separate entity of the budget committee can then review the budget and hopefully not find any misgivings. Having these extra meetings, it's very difficult for me to think that we're already stretching to the max the meeting calendar to try to add another Saturday or another day when it's already tight is, in my opinion, just over the top. And I truly believe maybe, like Todd said, maybe next year have an end of year meeting, the good, the bad, and the ugly to go over. And that, I just cannot support another meeting.
Mr. Sullivan?
I think the idea of that type of meeting makes perfect sense. On another board I've been serving on the last 12 years, we have a retreat at the end of the year to review what has occurred and ask again whoever's in charge for what they're thinking their needs will be for the future, which would then allow that group to give their thoughts on how the budget should be prepared. I think that would be something that would be worthwhile. Doing it right before, when the budget's going to be prepared by Dr. Schenkel 2 weeks later, I think that's a difficult thing. I think if they know, ultimately the council is going to be responsible for recommending or approving Dr. Schenkel's presentation, but if we don't tell them early enough to say, well, he may have a perfectly good reason for presenting something, but if the council has no inclination to support something like that, he just did all his time preparing to present when he doesn't know if the council's going to even support it. So I think that type of review of what has been done and what we're going to be dealing next year makes sense, but probably after early in July at some point would make sense. So he would have a guideline on what the council was thinking. And we did talk about that earlier on what we thought his presentation should be, like last